When people say someone changed, they usually mean there was a fight, an affair, a secret, something loud. This wasn't loud. This was worse. Eli didn't stop loving me. He didn't stop showing up. He didn't start disappearing at night, or hiding his phone, or picking pointless arguments. If anything, he became more dependable than ever. That was the problem. He moved through our apartment like a man trying to complete a checklist before the clock ran out. Coffee ready before sunrise. Dog walked. My prenatal vitamins lined up beside the kettle. Grocery list updated. Laundry folded into perfect squares. Bills paid 3 days early. The nursery dresser assembled with the instruction booklet still stacked neatly on top, like proof that he had followed every step exactly. Anyone else would have called him a dream. But I knew the man I had agreed to marry. The real Eli used to sing badly while washing dishes. He used to make up dramatic backstories for strangers in parking lots. He used to kiss me in the kitchen just because a song he liked came on. He had this ridiculous laugh that always started too loud, then turned into coughing because he couldn't control it. Now he smiled the way customer service workers smile at people they'll never see again. Quick, polite, gone. At first I blamed stress. We were 6 weeks from the baby. I had swollen ankles, half a spine, and the emotional stability of a weather app. Eli had just taken a promotion at the distribution center, which sounded good on paper and terrible in practice. More money, longer hours, more people calling him when anything broke. He kept saying we were lucky he still had work, lucky we found a bigger place, lucky the baby would have her own room, lucky. Every time he said it, it sounded less like gratitude and more like a warning against complaining. I started noticing the little things. He never sat down unless there was a task attached to it. If I asked how he was, he said, "Doing great," in the exact same voice he used on delivery drivers. If I hugged him from behind, his body stayed tense for a second too long before he remembered to soften. If I reached for him in bed, he turned toward me immediately, almost dutifully, like saying yes was part of the rent. One night I asked if he wanted to watch something with me. He said sure, without looking up from the diaper station he was reorganizing. We got halfway through an episode before I realized he hadn't followed a single line of dialogue. He was staring at the credits for a show that hadn't ended yet. "Eli?" He blinked. "Sorry. Long day." That became his answer to everything. Long day, long week, just tired. I'm fine. The worst part was how gentle he stayed. No snapping, no anger, no self-pity. He was disappearing so politely that it took me weeks to admit I was scared. The moment that finally broke me happened on a Thursday. I had forgotten my phone charger and came back downstairs after he'd parked outside the building. I was halfway to the passenger side when I saw him through the windshield. He was just sitting there, hands on the wheel, eyes closed. Not sleeping, not scrolling, not talking, just breathing like he had reached the surface of the water and had 60 seconds before he had to go under again. Then he opened his eyes, put on that calm little expression, and came upstairs carrying takeout and a pack of outlet covers for the baby. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I thought he was cheating. Not because I thought he wanted to leave. Because I thought the man I loved was vanishing in plain sight, and I was helping him do it by accepting every "I'm fine" he handed me. The next evening I asked if we could talk before dinner. He said yes immediately, which somehow made me more nervous. We sat on the edge of the guest bed, the one currently buried under unopened baby gifts and folded blankets. He looked tired but patient, like he was ready to solve whatever problem I brought him. I almost let him. I almost asked about budgets or leave forms or the crib mattress. Something practical. Something safe. Instead I said, "I miss you." He frowned. "I'm right here." "I know," I said. "That's what scares me." He looked at me then. Really looked. So I kept going before I lost my nerve. I told him I had watched him turn our life into a list of obligations. I told him he was still kind, still dependable, still doing everything, but none of it seemed to reach him. I told him I didn't need a machine that paid bills on time. I needed the man who made me laugh in the cereal aisle and complained dramatically about folding fitted sheets. He tried to smile at that. It fell apart halfway. Then I said the thing that finally cracked whatever wall he had built. "I need you to stop protecting me from the truth." He covered his face with one hand. For a second I thought he was angry. Then I heard him trying not to cry. I had seen Eli bruised, feverish, stitched up after a bike wreck, furious enough to punch a tire flat with a wrench. I had never seen him lose the fight against his own expression. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded scraped raw. "I don't know how to do this badly," he said. I asked what he meant. He stared at the floor and told me everything in pieces. When I got pregnant, something in his brain translated love into pressure. He stopped thinking about us as a family and started thinking like a disaster planner. He needed more savings, more hours, less waste, no mistakes, no weakness. He said every headline, every bill, every new expense made him feel like he was one drop plate away from failing all three of us. He said he kept doubling down because that was the only model of manhood he trusted. Work harder, need less, handle it quietly. Then he said something I will never forget. "The only part of my day that feels like mine is the 10 minutes in the parking lot before I come inside." That explained the windshield, the closed eyes, the breathing, the strange relief. I asked him why he never told me it had gotten that bad. He laughed once, bitter and embarrassed. "Because you already have enough on you," he said. "Because if I say I'm drowning out loud, then I'm not the one holding this together anymore." I told him that was ridiculous. He nodded like he knew it was, but not enough to stop believing it. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a roll of mints. "At work sometimes I throw up from stress," he said. "These help cover it." There are moments when love stops feeling soft and starts feeling like grief for what the other person has survived alone. That was one of them. I asked if he thought I would love him less for being scared. He didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. So I told him the truth as plainly as I could. I told him competence is not intimacy. I told him I never asked him to be unbreakable. I told him I would rather have an honest, exhausted man than a perfect ghost. I told him our daughter did not need a father who optimized himself into numbness. She needed one who came home alive inside his own life. He cried harder after that, which I chose to take as progress. We talked for almost 2 hours. Not in a movie way. No instant cure. No swelling soundtrack. Just two tired people dragging hidden fears into the light and naming them before they got any bigger. By the end of it, we made a plan. He would take 2 personal days immediately, not to renovate anything or catch up on errands, but to rest. He would tell his manager he could not keep answering after-hours calls unless it was an actual emergency. We would push the nursery must-finish list down to what actually mattered. I would stop saying, "We're almost ready," every time I got anxious, because apparently he heard that as, "You are still behind." We would ask his sister to take the dog for a few days. And, most importantly, he would stop giving me the customer service version of himself. The next morning I woke up before him for once. Sunlight was cutting across the room, and Eli was still asleep, deeply asleep, one hand open on the blanket like he had unclenched sometime in the night. When he finally woke up, he looked embarrassed, then guilty, then confused because I was smiling. "Coffee?" I asked. He nodded. Then, very quietly, he said, "I feel like I've been carrying a refrigerator and somebody finally let me set it down. It wasn't fixed. That would be too simple." He still had a hard job. We still had a baby on the way. Money still mattered. Life did not suddenly become cinematic and easy. But that evening, while I stood in the kitchen cutting fruit, I heard something from the living room I hadn't heard in months. Eli was laughing. Not politely, not on purpose, the real one. Loud, messy, completely his. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't sound like he was performing being okay. It sounded like he had come back.
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.